Hey G, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I know that you were very excited today to go and do this recording that we're going to be doing about the future of process automation.
Yeah, as you know, I love a good chin wag, a good
I
chin
love it.
wag.
But we thought this would be useful both for us and for anybody that's interested in how we're thinking about the future of process automation, seeing as we've jointly been in this game for around about 30 to 35 years, which is a reasonable amount of time. Maybe we can
Yeah,
impart our wisdom out there and our learnings.
yeah, wisdom, absolutely.
So I guess first thing, because it's the first one we've done, let's do some intros. So over to you. Who are
Yep,
you?
cool. My name's Graham. I'm the CTO at Jam. I look after everything here from customers looking at technology, what's the right technology fit for them, through to designing products and projects and implementing them, then supporting customers afterwards. My background is in software engineering and consultancy around the document automation space, and then moved into more of the process engineering stack, and now have the joy of leading the tech team here at Jam.
And my name's Andrew Murphy. Most people call me Murph. My role is to help both us and our customers look at their strategic vision for process automation from today. I call it medium term, but in today's world, that medium term is actually like 6 months, and then ongoing, and how we can take advantage of the best tech that's around, but get good results and get results quite quickly, so that we're not burning money for the sake of burning money, etc. I also used to be very technical, but over the last X number of years have moved more into the sort of design and architecture phase, and we have our teams that go and do the clever stuff that you guide them on.
Yeah, but you still, as we've seen earlier on today in our weekly Jam session that we have with our with our teams here, you still like to get your coding chops out and build some we agents
We
using
agents, I do.
Python
I
and
really have
LangChain.
enjoyed. I've enjoyed prototyping a bunch of agentic agents using LangChain and Python and ChromaDB and all of that good stuff, which we'll probably talk about as we talk about the future of process automation later. But yeah, I do like to get my hands stuck in.
Never carve that away from people.
No,
That
wait.
inner programmer.
Not at all. Not at all. Cool. So if I was to ask you the question, G, process automation, how's that changing? And I guess it's quite a broad topic, so maybe break it out into how is it changing from the way people build automation systems, and then into what advantages you get with modern tech these days, just broadly.
Yeah, broadly, yeah. There's so much that goes on within process within organizations, and it all depends on the scale of the process, whether or not it's a governed process by an external authority, like within financial markets or an insurance company or healthcare, or whether it's an internal kind of HR process. So let's just at the beginning here, the process can mean many things to many people. But when we look at the general direction of travel, you know, we've worked in the process automation space, which is very prescriptive process, which is very locked down. In order to achieve X, Y, Z within a business, we do this, we then do this, and then we do this. And it's all very prescriptive, very rules based before a process kicks off, in terms of when we talk about workflow and tasking that goes around. And over the last couple of years, as we see agentic AI now coming up, but before that, I'd say plain old bog standard LLMs with ChatGPT, we actually see that we're moving to a less prescriptive process based workflow that we go in, and that opens up a world of possibilities. For many people, it sets alarm bells going off, going, well, what does that mean when we don't have a rules based workflow, or a prescriptive process that we go through? But it moves us into a new way of working in terms of our processes, and it's quite an interesting paradigm shift to move in that from rules based to a more agentic centric way of working, and we'll probably unpack that a little bit later on. One other thing that has struck me, and I guess this is, since we started Jam and we started building processes for people, what can seem on the surface like a very simple process to build or to model can have so many intricate pieces that need to fit together, both from a business requirement, but also an integration requirements as well. So as we talk about kind of agentic AI and how you piece things together, because people are using more SaaS products, got lots of different technologies inside, actually stitching everything together is a big job now. And, holistic processes across an organization can get quite complex quite quickly. So yeah, those are the kind of things that we're seeing as we shift in. I know you've been involved in working with some financial services companies recently on their kind of client onboarding as well. I don't know what you've seen in terms of the shift of the more traditional workflow into what we're seeing now.
Yeah, so I kind of see this as another wave in automation that we've been involved in over the last few years. And you talk about moving from a very structured workflow into kind of a less structured process based. And if I think what you and I were involved in heavily about probably 10 years ago initially in its inception was around just good old fashioned case management, where everyone was saying we've been trying to drive these highly structured workflow processes, but we're trying to make people who have got a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise, and we're trying to ring fence them into you will work this way. And that actually makes it very difficult for those people to do their job. But again, to your point, it makes it very difficult to even get that knowledge into the process, right? Because it all sits in experts' heads, and there's a lot there, and there's so many variances and nuances, and even before you think about the integration side that you mentioned, just that whole concept meant that case management was nice because you could say, these are the main stages that we're going to go through. And at each stage, I'm just going to give a toolbox of things for somebody that knows what they're doing to go and do the work, but record they're doing it, make sure they're compliant, and then shimmy out to the next stage and out. And that's actually worked really well for a lot of industries as you go through, right? And the atypical one people talk about would be sort of complaint handling, but there's advanced stuff in matter management and things that we know and love because of some of the work that we've been doing. And as we look at the way process is evolving now, I see it coming back to that same ethos, but rather than doing it through basically opening up a case file and recording everything that goes in there and letting a person do it, actually they're with LLMs and with generative AI, etc., and then people talking about agentic AI and anonymous agents, the ability to go and get that knowledge and put it into process and how that gets orchestrated is, again, you said, moving away from that having to pre-describe it and make it more knowledge-based in quite an interesting way, which I know that we'll talk about a little later. So that's at the heart of the evolution. I think it's the same thing as you. The overall problem hasn't changed, and the approach to trying to tackle it probably hasn't changed either, but the technology approach fundamentally changing.
Yeah, and so we work. I guess it depends on what industry you're working with. So if we think about say complaints handling, for instance, to start with, I guess the application of agents and AI into a kind of high volume repetitive scenario versus a more knowledge-based work, right? So we work with some law firms where prescriptive process just needs to be 5 boxes on a canvas that we need to do this, and then all the things that happen within a stage of a process is the knowledge stuff that happens. Somebody gets told they need to do this and they go off and do it. if you're, say, doing a filing with say, a patent office or something like that, actually the knowledge work is the valuable piece that you're putting together, and then that's part of the process. But if you look at a call center handling complaints, that's a very prescriptive process. So the application of the agents in that sense will be different. The agent for the knowledge base is a facilitation and taking some things that are enablement for the user to take away some of the stuff that they don't need to be doing anymore, or the background work that they could be doing. And then in the the more high volume structured processes, it's actually removing the human from having to do almost all of it, because you can actually prescribe that and do that with an agent instead. So yeah, it's interesting the way that those two, enablement and replacement can both be achieved.
So we've both fallen foul of talking about the term agents and AI agent without actually describing what that is, right?
Yes.
And for me, it's a bit of a fundamental question at the moment, because everybody, if you look at all of the mainstream vendors, so Microsoft, Google, IBM, you name it, they're all talking about agentic AI at the moment as that wrapper term that's sort of come into play. But if you look underneath the hood as to what they are and what they do, then it becomes a lot more, actually, there's a lot more understanding as to what it is and how it adds value. So from my side, there's, if we think of an agent and what an agent would do, it's still a coded little coded mini application, right? That's going to run, whether it's running as a service, whatever it is, it's a little mini application that's running that will go and do something for you. So, for example, good old fashioned is, hey, in comes an email. I need to go and get a document out of it, classify it, figure out it's an invoice, get the invoice number out of it, and go and into my invoice system to get it paid, right? So there's an agent there. And we've been doing that for years. And there's bits of AI that have come into play to make that easier. So in the Microsoft world, you've got intelligent document processing that I could plug into to go and do the extraction, the classification and the extraction of the invoice number, etc. But it's very sort of safe and traditional AI. Then you move that into the agentic piece, where in my mind, you're then plugging in LLMs and generative AI into that mix, which is then bringing that more intelligent, generative-based content into the agent. So then you've got agentic agents. And there's some cool capabilities that you can plug in and reasonably safely do the assistive thing that you spoke about. So when I get to this stage, what should I do? And then you've got the future state thing that people are talking about, which is autonomous AI agents, which are saying, hey, you will take on the entire role of a complaint handler and end-to-end soup to nuts. You'll go and do it. Oh, and by the way, you'll learn how to do it better later on. Exciting, but a little bit down the line, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean but that's the exciting part. I'd say, you can do a lot with I'd say normal agents, as in we're calling them normal agents now, and they've only been kind of the thing for the last 6 months or a year, what we've been talking about. But like, if we were to boil down, and this is a conversation we have a lot with internal staff and customers at Jam, is like, what is the difference between agentic AI and just AI? Because at the moment there's lots of masquerading as, oh, we've got agents doing stuff, when it's just an API that you give something into and you get something back from it. And that's a very loose terminology for being an agent per se. But if we try and break it down, and I know, Murph, you've done a lot more research than I have for this, into it. But if I was to describe it, I would say it's an artificial intelligence that acts more like an assistant with its own initiative than just following a set of pre-described instructions. So if I was to say, here's a workflow and it's got these 5 steps, and I write them all down and I give them to someone, they're just following my instructions. Whereas an agent uses more of its own initiative, artificial initiative, instead of artificial intelligence to be able to do stuff. So an agent would, try and understand the goal of what you're trying to achieve, and then plan the steps to reach that goal. Then, in some forms at the moment, take action on its own where applicable to do something, and then that adaptability to then say, okay, well, if something changes, I need to adapt to the changing environment to be able to do that. So if we think about that as an analogy, you have say we have an intern at Jam, and we're like, hey, I need you to go and get the top 10 clients from our CRM in the last quarter, right? I have asked it a question to go and do that, or I've told it, hey, I need this, but I haven't said, hey, open up HubSpot, find them in HubSpot, do all that kind of stuff step by step. It just goes off and it will do it for us. Whereas before, you would need to, pre-programmed absolutely everything in for it to be able to do things. So it's, goal-oriented, it's autonomous in many ways, it's contextually aware of where it is and what systems it's interacting with, and it's chaining things that might have been disparate before together in order to achieve it.
And I 100% agree, and it's a wonderful analogy, and it lines up in my head as to, again, one of the fundamental shifts in the way that process automation is occurring. Exactly as you said there, what we've been trying to do over the past number of years, successfully, I must say, is to codify the set of work instructions that needs to be done to do a task, right? But now we have an opportunity to not do that. So when I want an AI agent to go and handle a complaint, for example, rather than having to go and code all of the different permutations as to what you need to look out for and how you're going to react, what I can now do is say, here's the knowledge that you are going to need to have around you to go and look at in order to make the decision that's relevant to us. So that's like saying to a new employee, hey, here's where you're gonna handle complaints that come in, and when some complaint comes in, they don't need to be taught how to read the text. They know it. They can sort of understand it. They can automatically see quite easily this isn't even a complaint. This is just some crash that's come through the door, and they can throw it away. But oh no, this is a complaint, and they can see in there, and it's about a policy they hold with us. So now you just know this stuff, right? And before we'd have had to code that all in. Now that's just available. And then we say, and here's our company policy for how we manage complaints around MiFID II, or how we manage complaints around fraud, whatever that might be. And then they go and read the policy document and pull out the right bits and go, okay, well, yes, it is against that policy here. Okay, great. And I can see that the cap based on the amount of product you have with this is this, so it's going to be that. And my document over here, that some knowledge says, okay, and these are the things you need to think about. Or the regulator says, in this circumstance, you need to do these things. Rather than us having to go and write a gazillion lines of code for that, we provide the knowledge.
Absolutely.
And the textual guidance, and then it does it, right?
Absolutely.
And that is a shift.
So the thing I was wanting to pick up from what you were saying was that knowledge base. So if we put it back into, if we think about traditional process automation and mapping it all out beforehand, and then let's take the FCA, for instance, they produce guidance, and that guidance changes, laws change, guidance changes all the time. If we are in that prescriptive world of workflow and process, rigid process, and something changes, that means a complete re-understanding of how something works, then actually one small change in governance might mean a massive change in process that has to happen. And if that's based on an entire end-to-end process flow that's been running for years that has to change, that can be a huge amount of effort and time to then rebuild all that in. But if we think about the way that agentic AI works, and if we had a great call this morning with the team where you were taking us through how you build agents and discussing deep tech like vector DBs and how it turns different paragraphs and all this kind of stuff from documents, if you're using documents, and puts it into the database to be able to then do searching and vector matching, all that kind of stuff, which is really cool stuff. We're not going to talk about that much today, but that then just requires an agentic AI a re-uploading of the knowledge somewhere. Yes. And then suddenly it's handled in terms of being able to give you the information back in many ways. So yeah, in some circumstances, that can be a huge benefit to be able to do knowledge-based process rather than prescriptive process, which is a big benefit.
It's a massive benefit. And I also, on the same analogy piece, when I think about the way that we are learning how to apply LLMs to business process and how far they can go. At the moment, we talked about autonomous agents, which can just be left alone to do their thing. The way I see it is that at the moment, we're sitting in a space where we're able to program's the wrong term, isn't it? Give enough knowledge and prompting to a junior that it can go and do a very specific piece of something, right? So we can say, is this a complaint, and classify it, right? That's dead simple, and we can do that. Then we can level it up and go, here's some knowledge about this. What do you think we should do to handle motor complaints?
Yeah.
Right. And it can go, okay, this is things we should do. And then under that, of what you think we can do we have something that defines how you do it and who should do it? Yeah. Well, go and either do it yourself or give it to somebody else. And we can chain a bunch of these agents together. It's a bit like filling up a department with people that are excellent at one thing. Then you go to the autonomous bit, and in every company, there's normally one person that's like the guru that knows everything, right? About how something works. And when you don't know what to do, stuff comes in and they look at it and go, oh yeah, Bob's the best person for that, right? He knows. And but you're also going to need so-and-so, and they were on that project, so you need them. And I know that for this client, they want this way. And so they've just got uber knowledge that they've built up over time, and they just manage it.
Yeah.
That's the autonomous bit. And we're not there yet because we haven't gone through the growth path to get there yet. And that's how I see this.
And that's why I think that's where I think there's like misconception at the moment about one AI to rule them all. Out there is that organizations aren't going to be able to just go, here's even with kind of OpenAI, ChatGPT, bring that all in. Just putting that in and going, hey, that's going to do everything for me. It's not trained on the data that you have, the contextual environment that your business works in, the regulatory frameworks that sit around there. There's a whole bunch of things that sit around the implementation of agentic AI that needs to be taken into account. So when you talk about onboarding a new member of staff into your organization, when you put them in initially, they're not going to be very good unless they've come with specific domain knowledge from another place, or been trained to be able to do that, or made a mistake where someone's like, actually, next time, don't do that, do this instead. So it's the very same thing with agents, is you need to be able to train them and give them skills to be able to do that. And it's a little bit like, probably a rubbish analogy, but thinking about Amazon Alexa, when you speak to your Alexa devices, if I say, I'm not going to say it now because I've got one in the room, but if I say, hey, go and please play this, or do this, or read this, it'll probably come back to me and go, well, that's great, but I don't really know which app I need to use or what skill. So you have to go in and say, oh, you need to load this skill for it to be able to do something. It's kind of the same with agentic AI. And you mentioned earlier, these agents tend to start off with quite a narrow focus. They say that they're very good at doing this. So I'm very good at triaging complaints and getting it to the point where a human, because of regulations, has to come in and make a decision to do something. The system's not going to go, yeah, you're due compensation, go to the bank account, open the bank account, pay the compensation, and off we go, right? You can't do that. It's very controlled. But then over time, you then go, okay, well, it can now deal with this thing. Now I'm going to create an agent that will do this part of the process. And then I do this part of the process now. And then it's going to now do the actual payment handling part of the process. And you start building these agents, and then you have to start thinking about how all these agents interact with one another and orchestrate. And that's a super interesting part of multi-agent deployments, agents talking to agents, orchestrated with process over the top to allow that, and then also bringing the humans into the loop when inevitably a gray area arises in process and you just don't want your AI to do anything with it.
So if we just recap a little bit on, because we've spoken around the topic a little bit, I guess, the future of process automation, I think what we're both agreeing is that it's moving less from the pure prescriptive side, although that still has its place, and more into knowledge-based and agile business process, which will still need orchestration that sits around there. And the fact that with agents coming into play, they're able to do quite a lot of the classification and advisory work now. And in the future, yes, they might actually be able to run entire parts of a business process, right? And we work towards that. And that's quite interesting. So now let's say, what does that, if we're technologists, right? So what does that mean from a technology front? How is that landscape going to change from an implementation perspective? And I think just to make it even slightly possible to answer that question, forget integrating with line of business systems for now. Let's just think purely about orchestrating process and getting work done. Because today we go into really cool tools like Nintex Automation Cloud, K2, Retool, and we build UIs, we build process flows. How's that going to evolve like now? And then what do you think in the future?
Yeah,
Open
definitely.
up your crystal ball, G.
Well, my crystal ball. So I'm going to, this really difficult question to answer, because I think in many ways we've been living in the low code, no code tooling. I'm not going to call it the bubble, but we've been living in that world for quite a while where, the technologies we've been doing are like, hey, you want a form? That's cool. Just drag and drop and you're there. And we're also, I mean, that's great with kind of your Nintexes, your K2s, and then you've got your more, one level below that or above that, depending on how you see the triangle of, technology that you deploy in your organization. Then you've got Retool, which is a development tool, but a rapid application development tool that allows you to build applications really quickly, but gives you all the power that as a developer and I love opening up Visual Studio and coding things, it gives you all that power to do it, but a lot quicker and without having to, write a significant amount of code. So you've got kind of no code, low code. Then you've got like rapid development application frameworks like Retool. And then you have this interesting area with Microsoft where you've got the co-pilots, which allow you to do some very simple things in it to achieve. And then if you want to do more complex stuff, you have to back it onto this world of agentic development.
Yes.
Now, in the market, there are some low code stuff for building agents, but they're not going too deep. Really, to get value out of this, you need to build your own agents yourself using libraries, using developers, prompt engineers, dare I say, to be able to get the value out of really building out good quality agents. Anyone can bang out an agent if they want, but most of them will just be using OpenAI in the background and a few very basic prompts, and people will call that an agent. And it will do the job okay, maybe. But to really solve business problems, you really need to understand the domain that you're in. You need to then implement the right strategies for your data pool and where you're getting your knowledge source from. And you need to enable the developers to be able to build and prompt engineer and make sure that it actually has the outcomes that you need from it. So in terms of the landscape, yes, there are some low-code options out there to do it, but realistically, at the moment, this is a development side of the world.
And I very much agree with that. We've had very limited success in just using the low code stuff that sits under the Copilot Studio in order to do meaningful things and meaningful things that will perform consistently has been a problem. When we go down a level and we actually start to code our own agents, whether we're using Python, LangChain, backing that off onto, it could be OpenAI, it could be Anthropic stuff, it doesn't matter. But having that level of control there, and then being able to augment it, you've spoken with our own data stores, so vector DBs, knowledge graphs, etc., off the back, that will then mean that we've got more control over how we give the context for domain-specific information back to the LLM to then go do that. That's where it is today. You can then still use that in Copilot Studio as in effect, the conversation, the LLM, for the conversational chatbot, which is cool. And then for the low-code tools that are doing the process automation, they're here to stay for quite a while, right? So I see that from a using agents perspective, we will be able to have custom agents that will get enough information, as you mentioned earlier, to start a process. We'll be able to streamline the processes those low-code things are doing by getting agents to just do some of the work that we would have had to get a person to do before anyway. When work goes to people, inside of those platforms, we'll be able to have co-pilots or agents that are going to give me help to do my work. That might be guidance. It might say, do you want me to kick this off? It might give me an email, all of that cool stuff. It might go, last time you said this, or you say you think you're going to do this, but the expert there says, all of that cool stuff that we can do. And then analytics on the back that are going to help me understand how the flow is running. So it's going to be about taking all of that stuff with deving and agents and putting it in and around that platform. I think that's there for now. And then in my mind, those platforms are going to have to evolve even further or new platforms will come into play, which actually take a different view on their thing, which is basically going to say, you're just going to define your key processes and your key stages in those processes. And then you're just going to have knowledge. And you're going to have agents know how to interrogate that knowledge. It's going to know when something's a complaint, this is the knowledge. It's going to know who's going to handle that knowledge. It's somebody who is a complaint handler that's got this skills on that thing. It's just going to use knowledge. And us, which you alluded to at the beginning, won't be mapping as many things out. We'll just be providing knowledge into that. And then even to the point, I believe, that where today, quite a lot of the stuff that we do is we give people quite intricate UIs to collect a lot of information or to guide them to give us the information that we need. And I believe that a lot of that stuff will now be dynamically generated on the fly by the agent in order to capture that information from us. And a lot of information ought to be pre-populated. Right. So over time, again, that will suddenly appear. So you won't need to do that anymore. Today, these platforms, they're all embedding cool AI in there to help expedite the build process and the build of forms. But that's going to become almost sort of semi-done for us, right? We won't even have to get involved. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so the dynamic form stuff is brilliant. I mean, you see it in its first iteration with a lot of chatbot technologies, where during a chat it'll go, hey, I need you to fill in these things, and it will pop up. But even in that instance, you're the one, as a chatbot programmer, as the person who built it, you're the one who's telling it what to collect and what the forms are. But that next step is that dynamically generating the form. And if you imagine, I mean, we built some quite complex forms for people, like hideously complex forms to collect rules. Oh, if this is answered this way and it's below this, and then it's this, and then you're in the context of, jumping up and down, you're going to get this form. But that dynamic way of being able to build that is going to be a huge one. But I want to pick up on, you mentioned something about the running of processes and the governance aspect of it. So at the moment, there's a bit of a gap around auditing, compliance, why an LLM or why your agent did that. And I think that's going to be probably one of the big areas, is saying, actually, how do you make sure that when an agent has said this is the next step in the process, how do you validate that to make sure that that's the right thing? But not only that, is if it makes decisions eventually or actions something, if it actions something or made a decision, why did it come to that decision? Like, what was the trace of what was its thinking? How did it get to that point? And so I think that's a huge area that we're seeing, people grapple with, is once you put that in place, we need to understand it.
And how interesting is that when you've got domain-specific LLMs that are, dare I say, reasoning to make a decision? When you get audited and someone comes in and says, why did you make that decision? You can stick a person in a room and you can question them and query them, right?
Yeah.
You can't, you could go to the LLM and ask it why it made that decision, but its model might have been upgraded 4 times and knowledge is different. So exactly right. You need to be able to show what was given and what the inputs and outputs were. And I can't remember the name of the company, but remember that organization, they've gone to the nth degree, one dev place where they're actually using blockchain to not put all of it, but to put aspects of the inputs and outputs on the blockchain as the ledger. It's probably a little bit too far for most people, but it's just interesting to see how people are thinking about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's that point in time, is that, based on its current context, its current model, current data it has in place, it decided that this was the right answer. And as we know, with we were talking about this morning with LLMs, is how free do you want how predictable do you want the LLM to be? Do you want it to be flamboyant and just every time come up with a different answer, or do you want it to be more predictable? And that's, we're now into that world going, hey, we can generate all this stuff. You can ask ChatGPT the same thing multiple times, and each time you'll get a different answer. But now it's like tailoring it to say, actually, what is your level of difference? What's your level of predictability? What's that variable in there at the moment? I can't remember what it was, but there's a variable in there, temperature.
Yeah.
How far away from the original answer do you want to get? It's quite interesting.
And I mean, that is interesting. So, when you're thinking about these, I mean, we have, which you have pioneered inside of Jam, is the voice of Jam. So when we're engaging outwardly, what is our tone, and how do we interact generally with our customers, and what does that look like? And that's very much a similar thing that you have to put inside of your agents as well, isn't it? If you are doing things, what is your tone? What is dare I say, ethos? How are you governing the way that the LLM behaves? And before I sort of really got into some of the deep research about setting these things up and implementing them, I just used to think that was ridiculous. But then when you actually get into it, you realize actually it's really important that you do that.
Yeah,
so,
no, absolutely. No, absolutely.
And just back, Graham, onto the implementation of the agents. Speaking to a few people out there, it does seem that people have this view that an agent is just a simple, one bit of tech. It's an LLM that's been pre-configured by somebody else, and I can just call it and run it, and it's going to figure this stuff out. You've been to some of the conferences, and you've spoken to some of the Microsoft engineers there, and saying, I've got this use case, what should I do? And they come back and show you the diagrams. What does it look like?
At the moment, it's not something that you put into the hands of a business user and go, hey, this is how you're going to implement your agent. There's lots of different technologies to use in order to build your agents and how you go about it. So first of all, there's a lot of work up front to do in understanding your knowledge. And that's key to all of this. And every if any talks people listen to don't mention your data quality to start with, then it's not worth listening to, right? Whatever data you have has to be good quality. I think of some projects I've been involved in, thinking, man, we could never put an LLM or any agent in front of this because it would give you bad answers because your data is not good enough to be able to hold on to it. So there's this whole piece around kind of knowledge and data that has to be in there first. But then we've seen rapid development kind of from Microsoft, especially in this area, going, hey, I spoke to them at a conference a couple of months ago, and I said, I've been trying to do this with Copilot. It doesn't work the way I want it to go. And they're like, well, yeah, actually, it's not going to work that way. You have to go and build your stuff using these different technologies. So you're going to use Python for doing this. You're going to use LangChain for doing this. You're going to use these libraries for doing this. But actually, don't worry, we're going to make it easier for you to manage this and then deploy it and wrap up in a nice wrapper using Kubernetes, Docker, put it in a nice wrapper so you can then deploy it and then use it in your environment as an API or as a chat agent or baked into your business process. So the world of development is, you're still developing these things, but actually a lot of people like Microsoft are making it easier for you to wrap that up in a controlled way and deploy it and then use it. I know you've done a lot of work on our framework and our platform and steering that in terms of how we deliver agentic stuff. I don't know what your input on that is.
Yeah, my experience is that is exactly right, and the approach that we've taken at Jam is to kind of we've got the Microsoft camp where they are rationalizing everything into Microsoft Fabric, etc. Foundry, and then with inside of there, they're really sort of stepping you through setting up all the resources that's inside of there. They're wrapping up the ability for you to go and create agents and do test prompting, the ability to then wrap up other providers into a more governed, with a governance wrapper around it and an SLA contract around it for the operation of that LLM. They put in some of the auditing that we've spoken about, give you the ability to put hooks into that, as well as some of the management side. So they're wrapping that all up, and then also on the various databases that you're going to need for your knowledge, etc. They're providing those, and then they're giving you better UIs for doing indexing and tying in semantic search onto those vectors. So there's all of that that's being made available to manage and build. But to go and build it and to understand what the hell you're doing, you still need to be a developer to go and put it in.
Yeah.
And then we've got the other camp where we're saying, well, actually also there's a pure play, not pure play, that's not fair, but there's a non-Microsoft motion where actually if you're going to go and write something that's using LangChain, ChromaDB as open source, and any other LLM provider, what do you do to that and how do you stand it up? And that can even come down to, are you on a Mac and what IDE you're going to use on there? You're going to use Notebook, or are you somebody who's coming from the Microsoft camp and you want to use VS Code? That's all cool. And should you be writing in Python? Should you be writing in JavaScript? C#, pick a lane. So this is our standards. We're going to go with this. And this. So, but it's very intricate.
Yeah, and then add on top of that authentication and authorization.
Yeah.
And
securing your knowledge stores.
Exactly. Now that you've got all this data and you've put it where you need to go, how do you then secure it? How do you then wrap it to make sure only certain people get access to it? How do you potentially, I'm just thinking a couple of our customers where they have information barriers in place to stop people seeing things in different systems. How do you then allow data to be segregated within an agent so that if a certain person is interacting with the agent, that agent is only allowed to use a portion of its knowledge to be able to give you a response? So there's a lot around there. Super fun to get into the detail about and building these things, but having a think about all these different aspects of how you build agents to do this is it's not as easy as just going, I'm going to use ChatGPT. It's what are we going to do?
And it's really exciting, the things that have suddenly become available to us to use, isn't it? So if I think you do have to have a lot of knowledge. You have to code and chain these things together, and as you said, put in all of the good architecture and security and governance around it. If we think about what has been made available and made super simple, like really super simple, considering the fact that we have LLMs that we can just call with an API and give it some text and say, I'd like you to be as deterministic as you can, is just insane, right? It's going to go and do that for the generative AI stuff. The fact that we're able to download and have a local copy of a vector database running on our machines in about 45 seconds, right? That I can go and do nearest neighbor searching against is crazy. The fact that I can go and do specialized embeddings into that vector DB just by calling a library to say, hey, I've got images here, you go do it. I've got text here, go do it. I've got voice here, go do it. And then it's just all of that stuff, which would have been impossible, right, before, is suddenly there for us to go and do. And now what we're doing is we're working out, okay, what are the patterns that can be applied to leverage that power and develop these agents? And that's what's happening, is how do we develop them sensibly and then make them available across the different channels and plug them into process. It's great.
100%. And there's so many use cases that we could get into, and I don't think we're going to have time to get into those today. But if we were to, I guess time's coming up at the end here, but if we were to say, like, how do people, we're a technology company and we are just we're wrapping our head around this, and the pace of change in this area is huge. Like, one day you're doing something, and then the next day you're like, oh wait, there's a better way to do it because this has now been released. Like, how can companies approach, and how are we working with our current companies and customers to help them, embrace this as much as possible, not run a sprint before you can just kind of stand up? How are we helping our customers do that? Because I know it's a difficult thing and everyone's different.
It is, and so it's about knowing and having the stack that you're going to use today that you validated, and knowing what you can safely apply into that stack for use cases that go out, and then the level of control and governance and risk that the client is willing to take. Kind of gets applied into that. But understanding as best you can the kind of future landscape of what might be coming, and where we're researching what's coming down the line, they're telling us what's needed. And then as we figure that out and make it mainstream, or as suddenly Microsoft turn it on as an available tool, then we say, okay, this is ready now. Let's go to the next level and jump onto that. And when we're building the platforms, we haven't touched on the architecture side. The way that you design these things is such that you can plug this stuff in as we go. And that's the clever and exciting part.
So if we were to say, kind of summarize what we've been talking about here, how would you summarize kind of that, where we're heading to? We tried to do it at the very beginning, but how would you summarize kind of where we're heading in terms of process automation and the future of that?
So summarizing, fast-paced evolution. At the moment, it's in the world of the companies that provide automation tooling are using AI to help make that even faster to go and build processes. Companies like Microsoft, etc., and OpenAI are providing the big mature LLM models. Thank goodness for that, and they've got a big cost war. Companies like us that know we're providing domain-specific agents and implementation knowledge to then make that usable and plugging into process so you can do more efficiently and more effectively today. That's available to do today. And then going forward, it's moving more from this rigid design pace into knowledge-based assistive, and over time into probably fully autonomous.
Yeah, and that's the fully autonomous bit is the bit that we're still, it isn't there yet, but it's day by day getting closer and closer and closer. So yeah, that's super interesting to do that. So I don't know if there's any. I think we've run out of time for this chat today, but there's a whole bunch of other topics I think we can explore and discuss in future chats.
Yeah. Well, Graham, we've been talking about doing this for a long time where we don't script something, write it down. We just get on a call and have one of the chats that we do in the pub just and
Exactly.
record it. So this has been wonderful. Thanks, my friend.
Great.
Looking forward to it. And we'll do some more and we'll push them out. It's been great. So G, thanks for
Well,
your time as always, my friend.
thanks, Murph. And next time we'll do it with a beer. Catch you later.
Catch you later. Bye now.